Good morning, everyone. I'm Taylor Bloom, CEO of SportTechie. Thank you for tuning in to day 2 of SportTechie State Industry. Yesterday, we received great feedback from about 6,000 registrants from all over the world that this virtual event provided a really cool platform to connect, hear insights from leaders in these unprecedented times. So that was definitely our hope when pivoting this conference to a virtual setting, and I believe today we'll build on day 1 nicely. This morning, we were kicking things off with a conversation with someone who is an entrepreneur, business leader, team owner, investor, and father. So he can certainly speak to many of the topics on the minds of viewers here today. Mark Cuban, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks for having me.
So a number of topics to get to today. We got 30 minutes. I wanted to start off with kind of a leadership question. You were super vocal early on, and I absolutely commend you for that. We have a lot of executives and managers and founders watching today. You set a great example for them. How is your team and your management team communicating to your employees during this time? We've seen the headlines of paying hourly workers in full, but I'm just curious from a management perspective, how is that going? Everyone's remote. It's very different than normal.
Actually, it's not very different than normal for me. I hate meetings and phone calls. I've been doing this since I sold my company 20 years ago. It's just like, look, if you want to get a hold of me, email me. And that way I don't have to get in the meeting or get in the phone and say, how are the kids and who's got the donuts and what's for lunch and when are we going to be done and all the niceties. So I've always been an email guy. My executive team knows that's the best way to reach me. Of course, now we're doing some Zooms and all that kind of stuff or web connects and, but yeah, it's actually par for the course for me, and that's worked out really well.
Has there been anything different that you've added, like daily stand-ups, or maybe your team has done that's just they didn't do before, but they're kind of leaning into it a little extra?
Yeah, my team has done a lot of that, right, where they've got daily calls now just to touch base, and as much just to make sure everybody's okay. Everybody's so concerned, everybody's freaked out at some level, and our management team and myself have got to recognize that people are afraid. And the best way to deal with that fear is to communicate and let them know that you're okay and, they're okay and they're there for you and we've got resources to help. So, it's more peace of mind than, okay, what's today's business? But, if we can keep everybody busy, that's even a better thing.
Yeah. And at some point where we're not just trying to keep them busy and staying in communication, we do try to get people back to work. Sure. What's your process for trying to evaluate when is the right time to go back to work?
Safety first. I'm not going to put anybody at risk no matter what. And if we have to adapt and this is the new way things work and the streets are empty and that's just the way it goes, then we'll be a digital economy. Look, over the past however many years, when we've talked about going from analog to digital, everybody's always said, what, this is coming. This is the way we're going to do things. We need to be more green, more sustainable, and use more remote technologies. Well, sometimes nature has its way of making you do the right thing, and that's what we're going through right now. So we'll adapt. Wherever we end up, that's where we'll be, and we'll aggressively try to do the right thing, and do it in a way that benefits our customers and stakeholders.
And speaking of adapting, you talked about maybe there being a possibility of playing games May or June with no fans. What would that potentially look like, and what would that mean for your staff? And because that is a real serious adaptation to have to do on the fly.
No kidding. Well, first of all, again, no compromise on safety. So, the NBA is only going to do this, whether it's an exhibition, a game, whatever it is, if we're certain that we can do it safely. And the reason we would do it is because we need sports right now. We're all stuck indoors. We're all cooped up, at least those of us who are following all the guidelines. And so we need something to cheer for. We need something to be excited about. We need our teams so that our communities can come together and stream it or watch it on TV, whatever it may be. So, if we can get there sooner rather than later safely, that's a good thing. And so that's part one. Part two, what would it look like? It would look like, having the players, having coaches, probably a very reduced staff, and the technology for people to do the broadcasts. It may well be robotic broadcast for all we know, and you have the announcers, remote, and you put in a 10-second delay or a 15-second delay because there's nobody in the stadium or the arena that's going to, be ahead of you. And so you can introduce those delays, and then you play the games. And again, it's not because, we need to get the season in and we need to, make it so we find out who should be in the playoffs, but it's because the country needs us. This is bigger than basketball. This is bigger than any one business. We're in a weird situation. We're in a unique, hopefully, situation. And if we can do it safely, we have an obligation to try to do the right thing and give people something to cheer for.
Mm-hmm. Almost an obligation to lift people's spirits. When you're talking about being a unique, weird situation, I think everyone would agree. Do you see sports just at some point going back to completely normal? We've had a lot of speakers on this conference say, like, okay, there'll be some adjustments, et cetera. But is that kind of how you view it? Because at some point, we had a great pattern of here's how we play sports, here's the season, here's the schedule. Right. What will change, if anything, do you think, when we do get back into full swing?
That's a question at a lot of different levels, right? First, we've adapted. 20 years ago, walking through a metal detector never would have seemed possible. We adapted. You walk through a metal detector, going to an arena and a stadium, right? Safety measures, having a dog, having police officers look under your car if you're going to be parking underneath the stadium. There's all these security measures that we've taken to fight terrorism, and we'll adapt and do anything we need. If there's a viral, terrorist, we'll fight the viral terrorist by doing whatever we need to do to keep fans safe when they come into the stadium or arena. So that's not a great adjustment. But the second part of the question is, what new things can we do? This is also a petri dish in terms of what we can do as sports businesses to experiment. Historically, we wouldn't play games in the summer, not because it didn't make sense. In a lot of levels it did, because we would, it'd be basketball and baseball, and, the dog days of summer are called the dog days for a reason, right? But at the same time, we didn't do it in the past because the households using television were so much lower in the summer than they were in the fall and the spring. And so now we'll have a chance, just how it turned out, to experiment with something different. Now it'll be skewed because there'll still be more people at home, particularly older people aren't, no matter what happens, are going to be less likely to venture out. But television skews older anyways. Maybe we have a chance to simulcast. This gives us an excuse to say, let's work on things, and maybe we can build enough of a subscription audience or advertising-based subscription audience so that we can try to change the economic models a little bit. Because right now the leagues, particularly the NBA and the NHL, we skew a little younger than the other leagues, and so by having our games on cable and traditional television, pay TV, we lose some of the 34 and under audience who streams everything. So maybe it's an opportunity for us to experiment there. And even today, still, we have infection control, that came out of Magic Johnson getting AIDS in 1991. If someone gets cut, we stop the game and clean off their uniform, because back in 1991, we were afraid that could be contagious, which is crazy now when you think about it, but now it's just turned into a habit. And so we'll develop new habits just like that going forward in 30 years from now, people will say, why is that still there? And that'll be a remnant from 2020.
That's a great example. I haven't yet made that connection. And you talked about new experiments that could be made, kind of new adjustments. From a fan engagement perspective for teams, you started to hit on a little bit of where I wanted to go, Mark, which is, television skews a little older. We may have an opportunity to get younger, more digital savvy audiences. What would you be looking for the league or individual teams to do potentially differently coming out of this kind of petri dish, as you called it, which I like that phrase.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a good phrase or a bad phrase right now. But so one of the things that's changed dramatically in terms of making our games available is we've gone from a bandwidth constrained environment on pay TV to a non-bandwidth constrained environment. It used to be that, it was analog and converted, yada, yada, right? So now I think, like from the Mavericks, we're having conversations. Can we have 3, 4, 5 streams of the same game that it's going on traditional pay TV? So you might have one where you have Twitch-like announcers. You might have, 2 of your favorite YouTubers that are doing another stream. You might have your traditional broadcasters doing another stream. You might have a players only doing another stream. We don't care if there's 4, 5, 6 streams. We care about the aggregate audience. And so by looking for, by setting the priority of being an aggregate audience, then we can do things and experiment and try a lot of different things. And then there's the element of gambling. and so you can have gamblers feed where it's only geared towards, what are the prop bets going on right now? And so people that are geared to that. And I think that might be an element for pay TV that's kind of a salvation. So if you have a gamblers only feed, because you have, one of the problems with streaming is that you don't know what's going to buffer or when, and you don't know if everybody's getting the feed at the same time. Now, there's a delta between a satellite feed and a cable feed and even a good stream, and that's an issue for gambling at some level. Maybe 5G changes that with low latency, but I think there's a unique opportunity to kind of not reestablish, but juice up pay TV subscriptions and get gamblers in particular to say, okay, there's this unique pay TV feed that is geared towards prop bets gambling, so I know what's happening, and use that as an opportunity as well.
And talk to me a little bit about security, another element of the fan experience. How do you see that changing? I know I've seen some quotes from you about doing like thermal imaging and scanning people's.
Yeah,
that's going to be a major shift in just expectations.
It's really not, though. Actually, I mean, look, if we have a camera and there's a thermal camera there, and we're looking for your temperature, right? Again, it's no different than checking your backpack, right? And now all of our people are already instructed. If someone looks like they're ill when they come in the door, stop them, right? And so it's really going to be something similar, because even then, things will evolve. We'll be terrified now, and people will be very hesitant, coming in, and you won't have full. I mean, you probably will have full arenas because people will be so cooped up they want to get out. But I mean, people will trust us to do the right thing to keep them safe. The biggest question from that perspective is going to be facial recognition and being able to use video to try to be proactive. Will people give up a little bit of their personal rights for enhanced security? That's what we don't know yet, because, honestly, people are freaking out more about facial recognition than I ever expected. There's a guy named Scott McNeely who started a computer company called Sun, and he has always said, you don't have any privacy, so get over it. There's New York City, right? There's cameras on every corner, and whether you like it or not. And that's the way I've always believed it, right? You're going to take pictures. There's always going to be people taking pictures. They're posting them online. Well, you don't have any privacy. And so with that said, people still are a little bit uncomfortable. Some people are uncomfortable thinking that you're going to be on video and there's going to be facial recognition. They're thrilled if you put them up on the Jumbotron, but if you take their video, right, if you take their video walking in, that's a problem for facial recognition. So we'll have to see how fans react to that. And can we use facial recognition so that if somebody, just to protect people, just wherever that takes us, that'll be a big unknown.
Got it. Yeah. And to switch gears a little bit away from kind of NBA and sports, Mark, obviously, you're an investor, a business owner. We want to talk about small businesses in this time. SportTechie's a startup and a growing startup, and we're going through this as well. And it's obviously we've made this a virtual environment to try to pivot our best.
Congrats.
Yeah. What are your recommendations for small businesses, right now, especially?
Here's what you need to do later this afternoon. So this afternoon, hopefully, the House is going to pass this new legislation that includes something called the Payroll Protection Act. I don't know if that's the exact name, but that's effectively what it is. And this applies to all small businesses in the United States. If you have under 500 employees, and even if you're part of, even if you're a franchisee, let's say you're a McDonald's franchisee, in any given location, if you have fewer than 500 employees and you promise to keep all your employees, right? And then you can go to the bank and apply for this payroll protection loan, and they will loan you initially the amount of money for the average of your payroll over the last, I think it's going to be 3 months, for all your employees making under $100,000. If they make over 100, they're excluded, plus your rent, plus your utilities, plus some level of debt, as long as that total is under $10 million, which I think probably it is, Taylor. Maybe, I don't know, maybe your payroll is really high. But as long as it's under $10 million, they will lend you that amount. And in 2 or 3 months, whatever that end of term is that they decide, as long as you haven't fired anybody, you don't have to pay it back. That's crazy, right? It's absolutely crazy. And so, I mean, crazy in a good way, right? Crazy. I think it's the right thing to do, but it's the reality. So you as a small business, and any small business out there, needs to apply. And it's going to be interesting because there's going to be a lot of sports teams that applies to. The Mavs don't have 500 employees. So we have a lot of people making over 100,000, players, et cetera. But for all those under 100,000, that's going to be very helpful in keeping the hourly workers and the lower wage employees, just keeping that going. It's not necessarily a problem for the Mavs, but it can be a problem for a lot of organizations that otherwise may not be able to pay their employees, because we're going to be a lot stronger as a nation if we keep people in their jobs rather than having to go through the unemployment process and then them hopefully on the other side trying to get a job. If you're a small business, it's patriotic to keep your people employed. It's patriotic to go and apply for this loan. And it's patriotic if you keep them employed and apply for the loan that you don't have to pay it back.
Yeah, it's unprecedented and crazy in a good way, as you said. And okay, that's a great afternoon priority for people like you said, small business owners.
And by the way, I think people expect they have to go to SBA.gov to do that. No, they changed the game for this so that your bank, as long as it's not out of the back of someone's truck, right? Almost every bank, it can just, you fill out this quick form certifying that you do have these employees and this truly is your payroll under penalty of perjury and going to jail, right? You can't lie about it. But the banks approve it. You don't have to go to SBA.gov. You just go to your bank. Now, your bank might be a little bit slower than others, and depending on your sense of urgency, you might want to, shop for different banks. But yeah, it's out there and it's via your bank, not through SBA.gov. Got
it. Okay. And to be clear, is there an online resource to do that? If you don't want to go out in person to your bank, you have to go in person.
It'll be online from your banker.
Got it.
So in other words, your bank website. Now, if you go to SBA.gov, hopefully later this afternoon, because I've been talking to them, later this afternoon, they'll have all that information on the website. But you're better off if you have a relationship with your bank, emailing them and asking them about it, or going to the bank website and looking for it.
And so obviously this is a great resource financially for many small businesses, founders, startup leaders.
It's salvation for a lot of companies.
Yeah. It's literally keeping the lights on.
Yep.
What advice would you give to startups from a leadership perspective? Like obviously you have many portfolio companies and there's many first-time founders and entrepreneurs in there. I'm a first-time entrepreneur and founder. Like, what do you just kind of tell them to try to, weather the storm?
First, you got to recognize it's terrifying, right? I've been in business situations. My first company, I've been in business 2 years, had $84,000 in the bank. And some lady who worked for me took our payables, our vendor payables, whited out the payee, typed in her name, no, not even typed, overwrote the name of the payee, went to the bank, cashed them, and took 82 of my $84,000 and just left town. Her name's Renee Hardy, if anybody knows her. I haven't seen her since. And so I was, obviously your back's against the wall, similar circumstances, but not the same circumstances, but net effect is this, right? And so you have to realize that everybody's back's against the wall right now. And everybody's going through the same thing. And as a leader, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, this is your opportunity to get things right. In other words, Taylor, going through your business when you're busting your ass every day, there's 50 things a day where you say, you know what, if only I had the time, I would change this, this, and this. Dang, I wish I had the time to, reevaluate how I'm doing this. Or there's got to be a better way to do this. I just don't have the time to deal with it. Now you have the time. This is your chance to deal with all those things that you wish you had the time to review. So be reflective, right? Take advantage of that. 2, there's a lot of people, particularly in the service industry, that aren't working. And if you're in the service industry, here's your chance to call up Taylor and say, you know what, Taylor, I'm a videographer, right? I'm a creative. I have no money coming in. Can I work with you to redo all your content, right? Let's create some content. Let's redo your marketing materials because I know you couldn't afford it or do it before. If you can afford to pay me, great. If not, let's just work on this and maybe you can take care of me on the other side, right? But it gives me a chance to keep on working as an entrepreneur and a creative. The next thing is it's a chance for you to communicate with your employees, even if it's only phone, email, or video conferencing, and your customers and your prospects, to let them know that you're still doing business as close to usual as possible. That gives them a sense of normalcy. It gives them a chance to do something, and it gives you a chance to connect in ways that aren't as rushed. So, for you to talk to your potential sponsors and say, okay, we've been talking about this forever. I know you can't make a decision right now, but let's just communicate so that you have all the information you need, because I know you have time to look at it. And oh, by the way, how are the kids? How are you dealing with this? What are you doing to pass the time? And it's the same with your existing customers. Hey, by the way, if you can only pay 10% on this, I know we have a contract, you can pay 5% or 10%, because you're going to have a general understanding which companies can afford it, because you already know your customers to a certain extent. You understand who can afford to pay you right now, and they understand you're a small business and they're really doing you a favor that you're really going to appreciate if they're helping you out. And on the corollary, if they can't afford it, for you to say, you know what, I'm going to put this on hold. We'll deal with it when we get to the other side. You went to bat for me. I really appreciate it. We've been doing business for 2 years. I know you've been struggling. Let's deal with it on the other side. That's how you cement all these relationships. That's how you really add a human element. One of the most underrated aspects and compelling aspects of business is just being nice, being compassionate, and being able to show that compassion right now when it's needed most is not only a great leadership quality, but it's a smart thing to do business-wise. Don't be that idiot that says, screw you, we got a contract, I expect you to pay, or I'm adding the penalties and this and that because that's in the contract. Because no one's going to want to do business with you ever again. How you treat people today, now, whether it's your employees, your customers, your prospects, that's going to define your brand forever. And now, Gen Z, millennials, people look at the brand of the companies they deal with, and that's important. Because you don't want to have a Facebook picture with you having, wearing something from a company that was a jerk during 2020, right? Oh yeah, Taylor, you're wearing the shirt from so-and-so company. What's wrong with you? Don't you know they did A, B, and C? That's how social media has changed a lot of our lives. We are what we wear. We are what we show on our Instagram. We are the dances we do on TikTok. We are what we show in our stories on Snapchat or Twitter, whatever it may be. And you have to be cognizant of that, because every interaction you have is defining your brand forevermore, because this is when people need you the most.
It's all very sage advice, Mark. And to kind of flip this, we've been talking about advice for small businesses and startups. To look at it from an investor's perspective, this is a massive time of disruption, a lot of change. Every day the news cycle is something different. But with change can often come opportunity. Absolutely. You're an investor. How are you looking at this from an investor's perspective of maybe opportunities that come out of this?
Yeah, Warren Buffett said the best time to invest when there's blood on the streets, right? And you hate to say it, but it's true. That's, as an entrepreneur, that's where the greatest companies are born. I always say, FUBAR creates the greatest opportunities. FUBAR makes heroes. And we're certainly in a FUBAR environment. And so, if you have, on one hand, as an investor, I want to hear from people who think they know what it's going to look like on the other side. People have a vision on how things might be different and or better, because we're going to look back in 10, 15, 20 years and say, shit, here are 10 companies that were created that changed the world. And they probably would not have been created if not for what happened in 2020. And so that's one thing in terms of looking for things that may not seem to be obvious right now, but in a different world can make perfect sense. Then in terms of the stock market, who knows, right? I don't know if it's going up from here, down from here. I don't know, it's just too hard to say. But what I will say, if you don't know what to do, do nothing, right? There's just, you're not going to be, whenever you sell a stock, let me rephrase that. People think, first of all, everybody's a genius in a bull market, right? So when the market was going straight up, everybody would tell you how smart and how much money they were making. They kind of get quiet, or they get stupid when the market's going down. But if you aren't sure what to do, don't do it. That's part one. Part two is, if in 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 3 years from now, I think the market's going to be up. And so it's not a bad thing to dip your toe in and maybe buy a Vanguard low-cost mutual fund. And what I've been doing is I've been taking like 1%. And when the market's down a lot, I'll just buy, SPY, it's a thing called Spiders, which represents the S&P 500, just to dip my toe in, because at some point it will all come back. But the biggest thing is we don't know how long this thing's going to last. So you have to be patient. we tend to get antsy thinking, okay, now's the time, let's go all in. We want, because particularly if you're in the sports industry, because you probably have a competitive side to you, and it's like, here's my chance to get a win, but you got to be patient. This thing can go on 6 weeks. It could go on, 60 weeks. We don't know. And we don't know how that's going to impact business, on the macro basis. And we don't know how the market's going to respond to that. All that's uncertainty. So you have to be careful and be patient.
Mark, we have time for about 2 more questions. I'd say one that we've been getting a lot, and I think people really value your input, is this is a tough time to graduate in college. What advice would you give to new college graduates looking for a job, looking to just, pay off their student debt? It's a lot to handle.
Yeah, it's a lot to handle. So one, when I graduated, it's so long ago I won't even mention the year, the unemployment rate in the state of Indiana, I went to Indiana University, was over 20%. And so it was tough to get a job, and a lot of people couldn't get jobs. And I got a job as a bartender. Don't worry about getting the perfect job. Get a job. You spent 4 years borrowing and paying to learn. Just get paid to learn. Whether it's a job as a bartender or a waiter, it doesn't matter. If it's a job that isn't, maybe not your dream job, because in this day and age, you're not looking for a career. You're just looking for a job to pay the bills. And whatever job you're in, you're going to learn. You're going to learn a lot. I learned more from the jobs I got fired from and that I quit than I did from the jobs I liked the most, because I learned what not to do. And that taught me amazing lessons. So get a job, get paid to learn, and then just keep your eyes open, learn while you're in that job, and then just go from there. Now, getting a job, any job, in a storm is a good job. And so don't be picky. There's again, the jobs I've gotten fired from, I made some of my best friends. There's always going to be a positive. Jobs I quit, I made some of my best friends. And so don't stress about that. And 2, I'll tell you a little secret. So, all graduations are getting canceled right now. You can't have a graduation. You don't want to kill grandma who came to watch you graduate. And so, and so not to be, cold, but I'm working with Live Nation, who does concerts, right? We're working to put together a graduation day. Hopefully we'll be able to do this in August before everybody goes back to school, where all the kids who didn't get a graduation on every college campus around the country, it'll be graduation day, and there'll be the world's hugest graduation party for all those kids who couldn't get to graduation, and just have huge bands and everything. Now, it's just in talking stages, obviously, because we don't know what, where and when, but there's going to be ways for new graduates to celebrate, because I'm telling you, the other side of this, and this is business related as well, when we're on the other side of this, people are going to have such cabin fever. Everybody's going to go outside. Everybody's going to want to go to concerts where they can, with or without social distancing. Vegas is going to be total debauchery. It's just going to be outrageous how people respond, particularly people who are just graduating from school, just ready, all cooped up and ready to go, right? And so anticipating that as a business also, you don't know the date, you don't know when, but you know what's going to happen.
And last quick question, Mark, bright spots that you've seen. We're in a storm, but there's always really inspiring bright spots. I'd be curious what you've seen from your perspective. Maybe you want to give that out.
Yeah, I mean, look, in all this, there's some companies that are just crushing it. Some of my Shark Tank companies that make food, UnrealDeli.com, Sure Stop Bikes, Nuts and More, Mush, who makes, steel cut oatmeal, a lot of food products, because everybody, when you're hibernating, you need to stock up. And so any food product that you can put in the pantry or the refrigerator, anything like bikes so people can ride around the neighborhood, kids can ride around the neighborhood, they're crushing it. And so there are bright spots that hopefully they can platform that and grow. But beyond that, be nice, right? We've seen people come together, everybody, we're seeing a community spirit that we didn't see before. We saw it a little bit, with when Kobe died, we saw people show emotions and tell each other that we love them. But we're seeing it amplified even more, where, people recognize that we're all in the same boat. We all need help. And that, it's hopefully we'll keep that sense of community, and it'll extend for years and years.
Well, Mark, thanks so much for the time. You're genuinely, energizing to talk to, and I know people appreciate hearing from you. So very much.
I got to put my one sales pitch in tonight, Friday nights on Shark Tank on ABC. Watch it. American Dream is alive and well. If you want to get fired up about your business, we're there to do it.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Taylor. Appreciate it, buddy.
Be well.
Uh-huh.